In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sanctus. Take these vessels and go with God.
Yes, Father. So, Tommaso, what do you think is happening here?
It's God's punishment for the sinners.
But were they all sinners? This is the third time you've been here this week.
In secret, maybe, but we have nothing to worry about. We're faithful.
I don't know. It feels like the end of days to me. Mi madre says the priests are lying to us.
Don't give an ear to such foolishness.
If you say so. I'm scared. I'm Steve,
I'm Tom.
and this is Demagogue News with things you need to know about. Episode 20, The Black Death. What's going on, Tom?
Not much, just excited for this very special episode of things you need to know about.
Yes. You like that shit you did in the beginning right there? I felt really clever doing that. I felt made me feel really good on the inside. Got to feature as a sound engineer, I think. My new career post-corona.
Hey, like developing a skill. Look at you.
Hey, I mean, I'm doing something. Be proud of me. Like us on Facebook. Do something. So, we got a big ticket today, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, things getting kind of monotonous right now. So Steve and I decided to take a look into the past for something a little bit more calamitous.
People freaking out about X, Y, and Z with this whole coronavirus. And yes, it's bad. Yes, people are dying. No, we don't want this to happen. But let's just put some context of history into all of this. We got it pretty good right now. Just start off real quick on that.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of exposition on that. Compared to a little enemy from our past called Yersinia pestis.
Yes. Yersinia pestis?
Yeah, I've heard it pronounced so many damn ways.
Yersinia, yeah.
You'd think it'd be universal.
The bubonic plague.
Yeah.
So, the Great Plague. When the plague is the plague is that.
This one specifically.
And it kind of sucked. I mean, you probably all heard about it and learned in elementary school, high school, Black Plague, 3/4 of Europe. Well, it wasn't all in Europe, but it was all bad. It was all kind of crap. So
definitely what we call the Black Death, like Steve had said, the plague, it wasn't referred to as such. Like, it's a term that was developed centuries later. So they would have probably called it like the pestilence or like.
Right, epidemico, just sickness.
Yeah.
Just mass sickness. And nobody was spared in that one. I think the numbers go from 75 to 200 million people.
Yeah, obviously because it took place so long ago, the stats are hard to place, but 75 to 200 million people sounds really bad today, but the Earth's population was
about 500,000 people total.
Yeah, very drastically smaller than that. So that was a heavy hit. Possibly like 30 to 60% of Europe dead.
Yeah, and that was just the first. That wasn't just in the first round between 1346 to 1351.
Yeah.
So in 4 years, let's just call it easy. Half of everybody out the door. It's pretty rough.
Just a little bit. Delving a little bit deeper into it, what it's mainly known as, the bubonic plague, is the biggest and first wave, but there were also 2 successive waves. So we'll go into each of them really fast. So bubonic, for instance.
So there's 3 ways that it manifests. It's all the same disease, but it depends on how it gets in your body.
Yeah.
If it gets in through a flea that stabs you, eats you, then it will go into your lymph nodes, and that's the bubonic plague. If you see these big weird bubbles, tumors on people's bodies, if you Google it, that's their lymph nodes swelling up, inflamed, leaking pus, all this terrible bad stuff. That one is the disease to get.
Yeah, that's if you were actually looking at a shot at surviving, it's bubonic plague for sure.
Right.
So
pretty easy to not die.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say pretty easy. Like you have a
Well, it's still like a coin toss. It's like 50 chance.
It's up there. Yeah, you get fever between 100 and 106 degrees Fahrenheit. headaches, nausea, vomiting.
Yeah, malaise, just feel like shit. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
great.
and it's also lasts about a week if you're going to survive it.
Yeah,
So it's
and
excruciating.
yeah, incubation is like a day. Like a day or two, you're all right, and then 3 and 4, it's getting worse, and you're probably gonna die on day 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So if you don't die on day 7 or 8, okay, you got there's a light at the end of your tunnel for you.
Yeah, welcome to the winner's circle.
Yeah.
But, it mainly spread through like these buboes. If you pop them, they leak out like pus and blood.
Yeah, and that's not good on any day of the week. But when they got some deadly disease, I don't think so. Number 2 is pneumonic plague, which is just like the gnarliest form of pneumonia, and that had like a 70% chance of death. Coughing up blood, lungs falling apart, buboes in there. Like you always get this bubonic type of these big tumor things only if you lasted long enough.
Yeah.
Because the third one, if it gets straight into your bloodstream, you just get septicemia, which is a massive blood infection.
Yeah, it's like red like spots all over your body.
You might not make it to day 3.
Yeah,
That's like a 95% mortality rate.
It's close to 100, and you could be like wake up feeling all right, and then throughout the day get worse, and then maybe in the late afternoon you're dead.
Yeah, once you get it, you're already going down on the roller coaster. It's already too late. Yeah.
So I think that the phrase that a lot of actually contemporary people would call it the dance of death, because you could literally go out and dance in the morning and then die. At the end of that day.
The old frescoes and things. Yeah, literally, it's 8 hours. The 8-hour plague. That one, luckily enough, was so deadly that it wasn't that common to spread through that medium, because you died so fast. Like, boom. Yeah, you didn't last to be able to spread it to people.
Which, not really the best case scenario for the disease, but pretty horrible for the host.
Not the greatest for the person, but like best case scenario for the population.
Yeah.
If you just died fast enough, it'd be, over and done with.
You don't go through the torture of the bubonic version.
Right. Or spreading it to your family and then they die and you survive. Well, that sucks.
So a lot of, obviously technology much worse back then. So you get
technology, witchcraft.
Yeah. None of that.
Burn them at the stake.
So the contemporary sources give us a number of sort of explanations as to what they thought it was. So
God.
Yeah, a lot of it, God, obviously. They thought that God was punishing them. One of the common forms of trying to exercise that was flagellant, which they would take a flagella, which is like a whole bunch of like
it's basically like a cat of nine tails, isn't it?
Yeah. And they would whip themselves in the back, almost as if like punishing themselves so that God didn't have to punish them.
So you create open wounds for yourself that you then walk around and get the bubonic plague.
Yeah.
That's a great plan.
Winning strategy.
Number 2, bad smells. It's the classic one. The plague doctors
miasma
came straight out of the bubonic plague, because the one thing that dying bodies have is smelly. So dying plus smelly, smelly's fault. So let's put herbs and smelly things that smell good inside of a weird cone in my face, and I'll be fine. And it didn't really work either. But it looks cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a staple in steampunk culture.
Yeah, it looks great. Number 3, the planets.
Oh, yeah, like, what was it? Something about Saturn?
Yeah, so the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter crossing together, apparently Saturn was hungry, and it was feasting on all of our souls. So that's why we're all dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of souls going up, the Muslim world had a very the modern-day Christians would call it like the rapture, but they thought that it was like expediting the process, and the good people were actually getting the plague.
You got to go to God earlier. This is before you think 76 versions and blah, 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 all that crap. That's super fundamentalist Islam. Islam back in the day was a lot different. I can only imagine how strange it must have been from one church to another. I'm sure the clergy probably talked to each other even back then, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the spread of information is a lot slower.
But they're talking about, this is a good thing.
Yeah, like this is punishment for the people left behind.
Right. This is their, revelations. We get to go, to heaven. We get to go to the next place. And how do you do that? It sucks the whole way until you watch somebody fall apart and they die.
Yeah.
And okay, it's great. And another reason why they thought it is the classic someone who looks different from you.
And this is where we get into good, almost like Holocaust-esque.
Yeah,
like,
it's the Jews' fault. It's the gypsies' fault. Lepers. If you're in the wrong town and your skin color is different, your fault.
Yeah, it's pretty much plain and simple, blaming the other. However, one of the weird sort of circumstances that is that the Polish Jewish population kind of gets created here because Casimir II, King of Poland, welcomed the Jews who were fleeing.
Yeah, with open arms, come to Poland to run from the pogrom of killing Jews for the disease.
Yeah, I mean, certain populations, like Jewish communities, were just absolutely annihilated during this.
Yeah. It's a thing that Jews poison the well.
It's always
Where
they're
did
like,
that come from?
I don't actually know. It's I mean, from the Bible, it's like they're the chosen people, so they go through all the like crucibles, if you will. But I don't know why like humans just always go for. They're the minority.
You're chosen, we're not. Ew. Yeah.
Kind of.
So obviously the 14th century peasant was definitely very knowledgeable on how to combat this. Very smart people. But in modern knowledge, we kind of figured it out because the plague is here even today.
Yeah, it actually still exists.
I think
right
that
now.
there's an average of 200 cases in the U.S. every single year of the plague. But now, because the plague is a bacteria, we get antibiotics. If you catch it quick, you'll be fine. You'll have an interesting story to tell. Probably, yes.
That's
Very,
certainly like
very
it.
high. Very low mortality rate, I should say. So you're probably gonna be fine. And I got the plague. How about that? Boom.
Going medieval.
Good at medieval. Yeah, but they've kind of figured it out back then too that there was something wrong with the rats.
Yeah, that was they kind of accurately pointed that out, but with our modern knowledge, it was actually the fleas on the rats.
Right, because the rats would actually have it, but they weren't really affected by it. They were actually they could carry it and be totally fine, but the fleas totally did not have a good time with the plague.
I thought that it was like they were killing rat hosts, so they were latching onto humans.
Exactly. Well, maybe rat hosts. There's a lot of explanations of why this happened. What I have gleaned is that it made the fleas more aggressive.
Really?
So they'd
Yeah,
start.
I thought it was like they were the disease made them like expunge everything inside their bodies, and they would get like really hungry again, like voraciously so. So it was like not just sticking to rats.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it made them more aggressive, and they started getting anything close to them versus
Yeah.
just this nice, easy rat. And so they go for other things, including people. Flea gets on you, sucks a little bit of your blood, does a little thing, pukes some, black plague onto you, and flies away. And that's a shitty way to go because you can't really control fleas in 14th century France.
Yeah,
Or
unfortunately not.
sanitation is not no bleach, no Lysol back then.
So this plague, like many others, started near China.
Yes, it's the Oriental flea, is what was carrying the Oriental red flea. I think was carrying the bubonic plague. Always China. Always. What's wrong? It can't all be China's fault.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like maybe
I mean, was the Mongols like revenge for China?
kind
the
of.
Mongols just blow through China like nobody's
And
business.
the Mongols did, and I'm sure that displaced a lot of the rats, which got them to move.
Spread 'em around the Silk Road. That was like a big trading.
Hitching onto the Silk Road to find other human habitations because rats love living near humans. If you haven't noticed,
They're
So-
fucking everywhere.
yeah. So taking that Silk Road, it starts to get into the European world after a little scuffle between Genoese merchants and the Mongols in a place called Kaffa in the Crimea. And then from there, the Genoese flee with the rats in tow.
Yeah, it makes no sense. The rats came with the merchants. Like, I guess it would make sense somebody's got it. Maybe they're like this 1 in 1,000 type of carrier,
Yeah.
patient zero kind of deal. But like, were the rats on the boat? Like, were they like, oh, everybody, the Mongols are coming, put everything on the boat, and then like there's rats like coming up the gangplank?
I guess.
They're
I
trying to
don't-
be a fly on
I
the
mean,
wall.
maybe they got into some of like the crates that they had, some of the
For the
goods
food,
they hid
food
there,
stock.
yeah, and carried the fleas with them. So after a brief pit stop in Constantinople, it makes its way to Sicily, and the people of Sicily eventually get like basically a ghost ship.
Yeah. By the time it goes to Constantinople, and then by the time it gets to Sicily, there's only a few people still left on the ship,
Yeah, everyone else is a corpse.
and they're dead. And the idea of quarantine isn't really a thing yet.
Nor did they have the foresight that this disease was coming, like hitting them like this.
Now, ironically, quarantine is mentioned in the Bible. In the third book of the Bible
Interesting.
is quarantine of like watching somebody if they're sick and separating them from the healthy people. But I guess they forgot their third book of the Bible knowledge that day in Sicily.
To be fair, Martin Luther hadn't had the Bible translated into vernacular tongues yet.
That's
but-
true. Nobody in the dock, everyone in the dock is poor. They don't speak Latin.
Yeah.
So, and
Then they can't read.
yeah,
Also.
the bishop hasn't really gotten to Leviticus anytime soon, so it's the church's fault. Of course it is. That's whose fault. Martin Luther was correct.
Here we go. But regardless, the Sicilians made the ship leave, but the cat was already out of the bag. So people are already starting to get infected in Sicily, and that's sort of the gateway for the European spread of the virus.
Yeah, kind of an important port. A lot of trade happens there. A lot of movement happens, especially Constantinople, Sicily, north to Rome, and it kind of goes like wildfire because this is day zero.
Mm-hmm.
1346. Maybe it's 1347.
It's 1347.
Yeah. I don't know. The dates were very accurate.
Yeah, October, and then
Oh, excuse me.
from there it's spreads to the rest of the Italian peninsula. So cities like Rome and Florence beginning to get infected, and then the ports. Pretty much any port city, you're going to get it. Like Marseille. or
Yeah,
like
Marseille's
Majorca.
really bad. I don't know if it's Gibraltar a thing. I can only imagine they're going through the Strait of Gibraltar to get to tip of France into the Britain, London.
Yeah, well, it eventually gets there.
Yeah, so it gets there eventually.
by
So
when-
yeah, and unlike our coronavirus, which went really fast because we have planes and trains and stuff, this killed fast enough, and the travel was slow enough that it didn't spread that fast. In the scheme of things, it didn't spread that fast.
yeah,
but-
it was staggered.
When it came, it never left.
Yeah, like you're going to get repeatedly hit. Even far off cities like Dublin or Stockholm are going to get crippling cases.
And because this starts in 1346,
47.
it starts in around 1346, 1347. And when does it end, Tom?
1352.
Like, when does it fully end?
Oh, fully end? It's still around today.
like the 1850s is when we finally got a grasp on it.
Yeah, I think like 1894 they had a heavy case in Asia, but it was like a small. It was a weaker strain. It's like it evolved to keep the hosts alive long enough to spread more.
Yeah, and I think it was like India maybe, and it was 3% of the population of
Yeah,
India,
that's exactly
which
it.
is still a crap load of
Yeah,
people.
it's still a lot.
Yeah. So this was definitely Pandora's box. Definitely everything terrible came out in 1347.
Yeah, and even London's going to get another heavy one in 1665. Like it just like these continued waves.
Yeah, I think at the time in Cairo in like the 1570s, they lose about half their population again.
Yeah, like
And this is all over this area. The Middle East, screwed.
I mean,
Northern Africa, screwed.
yeah, like the Islamic world is also going to get hit heavy, which I guess we don't really cover in American education. But yeah, like Cairo, you were saying, like 18th century Cairo had like half the population of 14th century Cairo.
Yeah, and they had 300 years of making babies, and didn't even matter.
No,
Didn't even matter.
apparently like bodies clogged the Nile, which is
Yeah,
absolutely foul. To
Yeah,
think
and the
of.
Nile is massive. It's the longest river in the world,
Yeah,
and it's also at some certain points, football field across, and that is chock full of just bodies. Awesome. Yeah, it's not great.
or even like in Germany, in 1350 there was 170,000 settlements. In 1450 it was 40,000.
40,000. That's right. Yeah. So, 2/3 of all villages became empty.
Yeah, you just get all these ghost towns all throughout Europe and the Middle East. like Alexandria gets hit heavy. Even like pilgrims going on the Hajj to Mecca infect the
Right,
Arabian
spreads
Peninsula.
Mecca, and then it goes just wildfire there
yeah,
too.
because there's a whole bunch of pilgrims. They all are going back home.
Right, they all kind of get together. They don't social distance. How terrible of them! 6 feet. Come on, 30 days to stop the spread. And go pray to the Kaaba, and then nope, you're dead. So yeah, not great at all. And that kind of is the story that starts in the 14th century. And I think the unfortunate thing is that this was probably a perfect storm thing to happen.
Yeah, it was.
The 14th century is very interesting. A lot of things happened that changed all of civilization in the 14th century.
Yeah. Like, for starters, the population of Europe between 1,000 and 1,300 doubles. So you already have this like large amount of people that they begin urbanizing.
And during the time is a period of like massive prosperity. The planet's going through what they call the medieval warming period. It's easier to grow crops. Everything's hunky dory. Life's great. Kings, feudalism, peasants, serfs. Live your life, knights, all that good stuff. And then starting around 1315 is the start of one of the biggest famines in the world from too much rain.
Of all things.
Of all things. So the planet starts waning out of this global warming period, and at a certain point, it rains so much because wheat isn't native to Europe. It's a Middle Eastern thing, and they can grow there. But in Europe, they were growing stuff, but it rained so much for so long that they couldn't grow anything. They couldn't get any seeds to grow. So then at that certain point, everyone starts starving. Then they start eating all their seeds that they were going to use for next year. So the next year comes around, they don't have enough seeds. Terrible. It was a lose-lose situation. And that was 30 years before.
Yeah, so obviously still kind of suffering from that. So the disease hits a bunch of like malnourished Europeans.
Yeah, that as a child didn't eat very well. Now they're 40 years old and their children there, and their bodies aren't the greatest thing to begin with.
Yeah, and not really a natural immunity in European populations. Like 0.2% of them actually possess the genes to be immune to it.
And that's not a good number.
No. But I guess even going to the human element of it, it's just like Agnolo Datura was one of the people, and he describes having to bury his 5 children with his own hands, and dogs dragging corpses out into the streets and devouring them, and pretty much everybody like wondering whether or not like this is their time, this is their end. You have to like think.
I mean, is it the end of the world?
Yeah.
There was a great famine that everyone remembers because people starved to death, and it was your family members. And then there's a massive plague that kills everyone. Also, the beginning of the 100 Years' War happens in the middle of this. The longest war ever. 111 years.
Nothing gets you ready for war like
death and pestilence.
People already dying.
Yeah, the 2 largest families fight over France, and that happens at the same time. So it's a shit time in the 14th century. It's not a great time to be alive. And not great. And from this, so many people die. Enough nobility die. Enough people in general die that eventually this destroys the concept of feudalism.
Not completely, but it starts putting the ball in motion here. Like obviously you'll still get like monarchs in World War I and stuff, but these like stratified castes that they had where like if you're a serf, you're going to keep working there forever under the same guy.
And his son, and his son.
And you'll always be bonded under them. Unfortunately, a lot of laborers are dead. So labor,
half of them, half of all of them.
So labor becomes very expensive and high in demand. And
because we still got to build stuff, we still need farmers, we still need all that jazz.
So all of a sudden, you start to get freedom. Like you can choose where you want to go based on the highest bidder if you're a serf, which didn't really that wasn't possible beforehand.
And then you can make enough money that you can actually have some type of buying power. Let alone merchants who like the merchant class becomes wild. That middle class gets very it's powerful.
Yeah, they start to become the guys who obviously they're creating wealth, whereas the nobility was just
using wealth.
Yeah, they were just inheriting wealth.
spending
yeah,
it
but they didn't know how to create it. Whereas like these merchants, they start to make more money than the nobility, and they get the opportunity to start marrying into nobility
to become the
yeah, to become
aristocrats of the time.
the top dogs. Another good one is like Geoffrey Chaucer. To speak of people who are really shaped by this, one of the greatest authors in English literature. He gets his first. He's born a little bit before the plague starts, so he gets his first writing gig like through the absence of church, the clergy being in charge of that kind of stuff. And he eventually, his granddaughter, I believe, becomes the Duchess of Suffolk, like marries into it.
That didn't happen before.
No.
You don't marry a peasant, no matter how hot she is. You don't do that.
Yeah, but because
You marry your
Chaucer he worked his way up.
Right.
Same thing with like I said about the clergy, they had a monopoly on education, and you actually start to see like secular education develop.
When there's not
After
enough
this.
priests because they're all dead, like someone's
Yeah.
got to teach the kids.
Which the clergy disproportionately affected. They were taking care of these dying people and therefore getting infected.
Because God wasn't being very nice to his chosen people.
Yeah.
His greatest workers wasn't very nice, and it didn't work out.
No, even like Boccaccio writing the Decameron, that's another like big work in the Italian language. But this I guess this shifts culturally, like Europeans looking at life on Earth as opposed to the afterlife.
Right, that was another big thing I saw, is that at this point now this grounded them to maybe not think about the afterlife because it was so close.
Yeah.
Death was right there, right around the corner, to maybe think about the world around them a lot more. And as such, maybe the inkling of the Renaissance was started that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Science.
The Medicis, we talked about them a little bit ago, like they
bankrolled the Renaissance, basically,
they
right?
did, and they start making their wealth in the wake of this pandemic.
A power vacuum, one might say.
Yeah. And from this, we get the birth of the Renaissance, specifically in Florence. And that really starts to create our modern world as we see it. Because without the Renaissance, you don't get the Enlightenment. And without the Enlightenment, you don't get countries like the United States.
Yeah, calculus, development of ancient Greek, politics, all that good stuff.
Or even private property rights. Like you start to focus more on the individual.
Magna Carta. Yeah.
Well, Magna Carta, I think, was like
1524. 1524.
1524.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was old. Yeah. So it's in the wake of that. It's in the thick of that. Yeah, this is a big thing. That it's not more than just people die, because people die all the time. It's the number one thing that everyone gets to do is die eventually.
Yeah. But it's a mass of people.
It's all of the people.
Like just houses filled with dead bodies and just like the stench filling your village. It's inconceivable to most modern humans.
Yeah, you may have seen pictures of mass graves, but when every single village has a mass grave everywhere, that's rough.
Yeah, when the village becomes the mass grave.
When they fill up that old mass grave, and we got to dig another one. But before we do that, we got to dig another one for these guys. And then by the time you're done with that one, you need another one. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, they just don't have enough space.
They're going to have people with shovels to dig. Yeah.
So in comparison to what we're dealing with now, obviously this is a weird time for anyone alive right now with like le quarantine, which Steve, you want to talk about like what a real quarantine is?
A real quarantine is actually not that much different than what we have now, except that we get cell phones and the ability to get food. Old time quarantine was a lot worse because normally you are on a ship and you come in and you got El Plago. You would sit on that boat for quarantine 40 days. You would stay on that boat, and you would pay to be able to eat and stay alive for that amount of time for them to see that, oh, you don't have the plague. You can come onto, whatever place you're coming into. Or if you're traveling by foot, they would have areas that they would just put you in. So you might be healthy, but you have to be in quarantine. So you go into this area with everybody else who definitely has it. And hopefully you make 40 days, and then you can come inside the population. that's pretty trash.
Yeah, it is.
That's I mean, it was better than doing nothing.
Yeah, it was.
When it comes to doing nothing, at least that was separating some people.
It was a work in progress. So now, like in the modern, world, it's just pretty much like, hey, just stay in your house and you won't get infected with the current. Okay, I'll call it plague in quotation marks.
Yeah, our current illness.
Yeah,
Right.
because it's really comparing COVID-19 to like the Black Plague is
The worst thing ever. It's terrible. It's not great, obviously, but worst thing ever? No.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make light of people who do die from COVID, but just the fact that you get like the sheer number of deaths from the Black Plague makes it like very different. Like you might know somebody who has COVID-19 or has died from it, but what if like half the people you know is dead?
Everyone in your entire family except you.
Yeah.
Everyone's gone. Yeah. Or every single one of your friends except for one is gone. And so is their parents and their family members. And out of the entire village, it's decimation. No, decimation is 1 in 10. What's the opposite of that, where it's 90 in 1?
Like 90 in 1? What do you mean? Like 9 in 1?
The definition of decimation is 1 out of every 10. So it would be the opposite of that. Especially on the really hard times, 90% mortality rate, 1 out of 10 people make it out alive. That's rough. That's not good. Also, no clean water and no food. There's a famine going on. Also, there's a war happening at the same time. And it's not great. It's not great at all.
But I think like that's almost like a lot of people alive today obviously descended from people who survived this, and you should kind of take that as inspiration. Like this is nothing compared to what your ancestors had to come face to face with.
And guess what? We made it out alive, and every single every single person in your generational line all made enough babies to get to you.
Yeah.
So, even when half of the population disappeared, we're still all right. We're going to be all right. It's fine. Especially when we have, something that's not nearly as significant. And with all our medical technology, we're going to be fine. It's going to be all right.
Yeah. So, hashtag quit your bitching.
Hashtag stop being bored.
Yeah. Just join us on Thursday for actual current events. I actually had a lot of fun with this little like foray into the 14th century.
Hey, let's talk about, it's obviously relevant. It's obviously something that is totally, something that people are feeling today. People are anxious, nervous, just like that poor Stefano being scared. Yeah, but we have information. We have doctors that actually do things. Can't imagine a doctor in the 14th century.
Hey, just do some bloodletting. Like, hey, bud,
let's
take it.
Yeah, open a wound and release some of your life force because you use too much pressure. Because with the 4 humors, you got too much blood. You gotta release put a leech, 2 leeches twice a day. That's the prescription.
I'm insanely grateful to be alive in the 21st century.
They still have medical leeches.
Oh, where?
Yeah, in hospitals.
Oh,
there's medical cocaine.
Okay, well that I could at least understand.
Yeah, there's still medical leeches. Yeah, so Black Plague. Don't get it.
Yeah,
a lot worse than it is today.
Keep your head on that plague swivel.